Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Adventures in History that is the history of Middle Earth.
I'm Spartacus.
Just right off the bat, I'm Spartacus. Kyle, thank you so much for being Spartacus and welcome in. 34 months is a good run of things, right? That's a very impressive streak you got there, my friend. And as always, I really do appreciate it. I was actually looking at my taxes today to try to get my W-2s and such in order for all of the coming loveliness that is, tax season. And I was once again reminded at how generous you all are. And I kind of had a little warm fuzzy in my heart because you all are awesome folk. Yeah, it's about that time, everybody. It is about that time. Come stay a while. Stay a while and listen. That's my Deckard Cain impersonation from Diablo 1. What's up, Cherry Round? Foggage, how's it going? Kyle, welcome in. Cherry, good to see you. Hope everybody's doing okay. We have a big one tonight. This is a really long story, and it's going to be, unfortunately, what we can really call a pretty sad one, if we're just being honest. And it's going to be one that is going to take us quite some time to get through. Most notably, I told my wife before I even came on that I hoped that I could get through this in 2.5 hours, and that was kind of an optimistic hope. So we're gonna talk tonight about the Children of Húrin, which is one of the sort of three main stories that Tolkien said were sort of the set pieces of the Silmarillion, the great tale of the first age of the world. And this is also the one that has had the most done to sort of build it up as an individual narrative. There was a book that was a standalone version of this story that Christopher Tolkien released back in the early 2000s, and it was it was the first in what Christopher hoped to be three actual compiled narratives of these three big stories, those being Beren and Luthien, the second, which we'll do tonight, the Children of Húrin, and then the Fall of Gondolin. The Children of Húrin was done first, and it was the only one that actually got the full treatment. The books that came out subsequently for Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin were not what we might consider a homogenized narrative story. Instead, they were collections of various versions of the story that the professor had written sort of through time. So you got to see the original version, and then another version, another version, another version, another version, etc. And I will be real honest. I was not hoping for that. I was hoping that these other two great stories of the First Age would get the full treatment like Children of Húrin did, because I adore Children of Húrin. It's an amazing story. It's unfortunately very, very sad, but it's the same sort of thing that you would find if you were reading one of these old Viking sagas. It's a story of pride and glory and honor and brash decisions that sound right in the moment but then don't really work out in the long run. So there's a lot of stuff in this story that is sort of like at the heart of Tolkien's love for these long narrative epics that he read so much of. Welcome, KP. Good to see you. So if you are here for the first time for History of Middle-earth, welcome. If you've been here before for this, you'll kind of know how it goes. I did a little bit of sprucing up. Like, I added some little corner decorations, and I added our, our trees of Gondor here. So it looks a little bit better. It's not just sort of blank brown on the sides here, which is something I kind of worried about. But anyway, let us start off with the tale of the children of Húrin. And first off, we're going to start off with Húrin himself. The warmest story in the Silmarillion, right? It's pretty rough. So this is our guy, Húrin. And who is this guy? Well, if you've been around for previous histories of Middle-earth and memorized everything that I've said, or if you're familiar with the story, you'll know that Húrin was one of the great leaders of the three houses of men. And he had been captured by the big bad, who is this guy named Morgoth. And this was at the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, where so many of the hopes of the elves and men of Middle-earth had been dashed. Morgoth had surprised them and killed a whole bunch of the really big leaders. And Húrin is captured and put to torture because he knew the secret location of the last big elven holdout. This place, well, not the last big one, but one of the last big ones, where... Anyway, it's this place called Gondolin, and the king was this guy named Turgon, who at that point was the High King of the Noldor. And Morgoth didn't know where they were, but Húrin did. And Húrin, being a faithful servant of his lords, refused to give up the location. So Morgoth took him to the highest peak, this place called Thangarodrim, and he put Húrin in a chair and cursed his eyes so that he could see out into the world and watch everything that was happening. And then Morgoth put a curse on his children. And at the time, Húrin had 2 kids. They were both very young, and they're going to be both still back at home with their mother. So the son's name is Turin, and the daughter's name is Urwin. So these are the 2 children of Húrin at the moment. Now, just before Húrin had gone off to the big battle, it seems that he and his wife, whose name was Morwen, I can show you an image of her. This is a depiction of Morwen, who is Turin's wife, had become pregnant. So there is yet, at this point, an unknown third child, because the child is not born yet. But this is Morwen's name, in case you're keeping up. So we have Morwen, the mother, Turin, and Urwin. Now, Urwin dies pretty young. The curse gets to her pretty fast. And unfortunately, with so many of the big heroes of the land defeated, evil men who had betrayed the good houses of men and sided with Morgoth move into the territory where Húrin's family lived. And specifically here, if we go to our map, this is our map of Beleriand, and we start looking at where they're from, we're specifically talking about this region right here called Dor Lomin. This region basically gets given over to Easterlings. Sometimes they're referred to as swarthy men or dark men. This is a description of their character more than it is a description of their skin color or something like that. So Dor Lomin here, which had been part of the larger elven kingdoms that had held this region against Morgoth's expansion, is going to fall under the sway of these evil men. And Morwen is going to try to do her best to take care of her children, but there's going to be a big plague that moves through. And unfortunately, Urwin, the daughter, is going to die very young. This is a sad moment because she was a very young and happy child, and she had the nickname that basically meant laughter. This is the word lalaeth. And so she was a very, very pleasant and happy child who was always laughing, and then she dies of the plague. So right off the bat, you get the idea that this is not going to necessarily be a happy story, because if we want to look at this sort of on the meta level, the first thing that dies is laughter. And I know that's kind of bleak and that's kind of dark, but that's really kind of what happens here. What happens to Húrin? Well, the story here is mostly going to center around him, and he is going to be sort of the main protagonist of this particular story. Welcome to the Children of Húrin, kids, right? Yeah, it just kind of goes downhill from here. I've got many pictures of Húrin, but none of him as a child, so we'll wait for just a little bit before we get to showing photos of Húrin. So, he's growing up, and he is the heir to one of these great houses. So he is supposed to sort of be nobility, but because of the fall of all of these great heroes and the giving over of his territory to these evil men, his house is sort of held in contempt. And Morwen is a very powerful figure who manages to keep the evil men at bay, but she herself realized that this is not necessarily the way that her son should be raised. One of the things that was happening during this period of time was that one of the sort of the larger, more powerful chieftains of these Easterlings was trying to get Morwen to marry him so that he could sort of legitimize his reign over this region. And if that had happened, Morwen sort of understood that he would likely then kill Húrin, because who wants the heir of the old lord hanging around when you're going to force yourself on Morwen, who was the lady of the territory, and make new heirs, right? So Morwen is going to decide to do some really tough stuff here. She's going to come up with this plan to try to save her son. And to do this, she is going to try to get him into the hidden realm of Doriath. So Doriath, if we go back to our map here, is this large region here. And you can see here that it is basically a forested kingdom. The particular capital here is this region right here called Menegroth. This is the 1,000 caves. The ruler that sits on the throne here is a guy named Thingol, and we've talked about him before. His original name is Elwë. He's one of the leaders of the first elves that got to go to the Blessed Realm, or kind of went to the... Anyway, long story short, he ends up staying over here and falling in love with a Maiar, whose name is Melion, but this is Thingol. He is the Lord of Doriath. And I actually really like this photo of him because I feel like it sort of captures how he is. He's a very stern-looking guy, but you can tell that he's not necessarily a horrible dude, just sort of overall. Anyway, so Morwen is going to get word to Thingol that she would like for him to sort of foster Húrin, who is, again, this sort of prince of men. And Thingol is not originally going to give the sort of blessing for this. He's just going to sort of go like, well, you know, I don't really know what we could do, because one of the things about Thingol is that he had so far not really taken part in any of these wars. The big battle that was fought at the end of the last History of Middle-earth stream, this Battle of Unnumbered Tears, the Nirnaeth Ardoniad, that was a battle that he sat out completely because he was not a Noldor. This were the elves trying to reclaim the Silmarils, and he had nothing to do with the Silmarils. So he was really not interested in getting involved in all of this stuff. So if he's like going to foster these, you know, princelings of men, does that kind of get him involved in the war? Well, maybe, maybe not. But basically what ends up happening is that Morwen convinces two of Thingol's basically border guards to take Húrin into Doriath. And so Húrin does manage to get into Doriath. The parting between Morwen and Húrin is a bitter one, because at that point, they never see each other again alive. So he's young at this point, like 8 or 9 years old, and he's already being forced to basically give up his mom and go live among elves who are not even the same species as him, right? At this time, right around the time that he gets to the region, the guy that sort of escorts him into the presence of Thingol is this elf named Beleg. Now, Beleg is this guy. Hey, Evo, how's it going? Beleg was basically a ward marshal. He was a border lord whose job it was to keep the borders of Doriath safe. So when these elves are going to get Húrin into the kingdom, Beleg is going to take him to Thingol and vouch for him in front of the crown, because Beleg was one of the few members of Doriath that had fought in the battle. He had begged leave of his lord to go fight, and so he had seen the valor of Húrin's father, Húrin, and Húrin had basically allowed himself to get captured so that Turgon, at that point the High King of the Elves, could escape. So, Beleg is the guy that basically gets Húrin in. So, Evo, we're doing something a little bit different here, because this is not history of like actual history. This is history of Middle Earth. So we are doing a special episode because I got to 900 followers. So this stuff is basically the history of J.R.R. Tolkien's writing. So if you've ever seen The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, or read any of the books, this stuff that we're talking about now is the history of that world. It's just something special that we do when we cross 100 marks of... that's real history for most of us. I agree. I really like this stuff, which is why I can talk about it so extensively. One neat thing about Beleg, he does have a sort of a nickname. And his nickname is Cuthalion. So Beleg Cuthalion. Cuthalion in Sindarin means the strong bow, which is pretty friggin' cool of a nickname, right? So Beleg goes back out. Thingol is going to agree to take on the fostering of Húrin. So we've got Húrin, and he's being fostered by Thingol. What's up, Viscera? Good to see you. You'll be lurking and trying to decipher taxes. I had to do some of that this morning myself, Evo. Bless you in your endeavor. So, what's up with adolescent Húrin? Well, he gets really kind of ticked off at being kept, right? The news from his homeland in Dorloman is not very positive. He occasionally gets word from his mother, but it's always like things are getting worse and things are getting bad and things are getting pretty rough. And also, as the distance passes between the death of these big elf and men lords, Morgoth is going to start sending out the orcs more, and things are going to get pretty dark. And Húrin, even as a young kid, was like, we got to go do something. We got to go, beat everything up. We got to go get stuff. So even at a fairly young age, we don't have specific age ranges for this, but as a very young adolescent, maybe early, like post-pubescence, 13, 14-year-old kid, Húrin was already a really big strapping kid and convinces Beleg to start taking him out to do forays against the enemy. So even as a young guy, Húrin is out on the front lines fighting orcs and killing bad guys. And that's going to really sort of be his idiom, right? This is going to be a pretty big deal, because eventually, by the time he gets to kind of like the earliest phase that you might be able to call a young adult, he was already described as being stronger than any elf there. So he's a big old guy, right? And he had literally growing up through the development phases fighting the enemy. So this dude is strapped. He's ridiculously strong, and he's effectively fearless. So this is going to be a big deal because this is going to start causing some tension inside of the kingdom. Thingol starts to basically love this guy like a kid, and this is not something that sits well with a lot of the other elves, because especially the high elves, sort of like the lords of the kingdom, don't really like the idea that there's a human that is so deep in the councils of Thingol, and they sort of feel like maybe this human has kind of hoodwinked the king, or that the king is giving him special privileges because he feels bad about his dad or something like that, right? They feel like there's some favoritism going on here. And it's not too long after this that Húrin gets placed basically in the company of Beleg. So Beleg is going to be the head of the company that does, the border patrol stuff. But Húrin's basically going to get put in second in command. And that puts him in command of other elves. And that's like not really something that had ever happened before. Now, there were great, powerful men that had done a whole bunch of good stuff, but they had always been under the command of an elven leader. So even Húrin, when he was fighting at the big battle, was under the command of one of the Noldor, right? So having a human in command this is a sketchy world where there's a lot of tension that's happening here, and this is going to be especially troublesome when the king gives Húrin a particular item, and that is this thing. So this is the Dragon Helm, and this is an artifact that had been, or I guess an heirloom is a better way of saying it than an artifact. This was an heirloom that had been held by the House of Hador, which Húrin was a part of, and had been held by the lords for generations. And it had come into the keeping of Thingol, and when Húrin basically becomes a man, Thingol is going to give this over to him, and Húrin starts wearing it as he goes out. And this is going to be a really big deal. Now, Húrin, for his part, is not going to be a perfect character here. He is tragically flawed, as so many humans and so many stories are, right? He hates being pitied. He is doing all of this stuff and fighting so valiantly and putting his life on the line so frequently because he doesn't want anyone to think that he's weak. He had to run away. His dad got captured. He can't go back and save his family. So he has to sort of work out his validity through going and killing the bad guys, right? And he is never really felt like he is at home the whole time that he's been in Doriath. And he sort of knows about this relationship with Thingol, and he kind of knows that he has some pull there, but he doesn't really like the fact that Thingol might be pitying him. And that is kind of a thorn in his side. So there's going to be some moments where they're going to be at council, and Thingol will say something that's infinitely wiser than anything that Húrin understands, because for all of his strength and physical capability, he's still more or less a kid, right? And Thingol had been alive at that point for thousands of years. He's an elf, right? He's immortal. Much more wisdom than Húrin has. And Turin's sort of, again, just got this one setting, which is find bad guy, kill them, right? And Doriath had lasted for centuries because Thingol was a smart dude. Are you proud of me, Dad? Right? There's some daddy issues there. There really are. So there's a little bit of tension that starts happening where, Húrin starts asking, "Can I go back and save my people?" And Thingol's like, "You're not really going to be able to do that because I'm not going to give you any elves to go conquer Dor Lomin. That's a long way away. I'm not spending my force to get involved in this big war against Morgoth. That's not really my thing." And then Turin's like, well, we should start pushing the boundaries out further. We should go clear the region surrounding Doriath. And again, Thingol's like, dude, you gotta kind of chill out. We have a set number of soldiers, and we have a set territorial boundary, and it's protected by magic. Thingol's wife is Melia, and again, she's a Maya. So this is kind of like a demigod or a very powerful angelic being. And she had cast a spell around the borders of Doriath so that nobody that wished Doriath harm could find their way in. So they're pretty set. And Thingol was pretty happy with that. But this is going to cause some disruption. And in the middle of all this, there is a particular elf named Saros, who starts really getting on Turin's case. And he hates Turin to begin with because so many of the elves had come to sort of respect Turin's prowess in battle, and he really hates the fact that Thingol is sort of doting on him. And Saros is going to be very acerbic and sort of come after Turin any chance that he can get. And there's this particular situation where they're at a council, and there's a whole bunch of people talking, and Turin is again talking about how like we need to go out and kill the bad guys. We need to go like chase them down and hunt them. And he kind of starts going off on his own and doing this stuff. Anyway, he hears Saros say this insult, and I've actually copied it out of the book here. If the men of Hithlum are so wild and fell, what sort are the women of that land? Do they run deer-clad only in their hair? So basically, this is Saros, who again doesn't like Turin in the first place, basically insulting all of the men of Húrin's line, and even insulting their women. Like, well, if the men are this crazy, how crazy are the women? I bet they run around buck naked. And this really ticks off Turin. And Turin picks up a cup and just chucks it at the dude's head. And there's an immediate scuffle, and everybody has to hold everybody back. And this is kind of like some come at me bro moment. Morgoth, if the forces of Doriath supply arms and manpower to the... Oh, come on now. That's way too much Russia. That's way too much Russia. But I appreciate that. What's up, Tuna? You missed it. The women running around naked thing was an insult about the animalistic nature of Turin's basically extended family. The clothes that launched 1,000 elves. Well, I feel like we're going to run full circle back into the woman running around naked. That is a great point of foreshadowing, and I'm not going to talk about it right now. But Kyle just recently read the book that all of this stuff is in, so he kind of knows what's coming, right? Tuna, good to see you. All right. So, Saros is not going to take the cup to the head lightly. And the next morning, we have Turin going out again, sort of by himself, to kind of do this, I'm going to go kill the bad guy thing. And Saros waylays him. He waits until Turin has passed him and tries to jump out and kill him, because Saros is ultimately insulted, right? Super bad insulted by the whole cup to the head thing. And he can't beat Turin in a fight. He sort of jumps out and thinks, I'll just kill this guy real quick because he's just a puny little human. And he's like a little kid, right? He's, 18, 19 years old. I'll just stab this dude and he'll be dead. Turin beats the crap out of him. And not only does he beat him badly, he basically chases after him through the woods of Doriath, poking him with the tip of Turin's sword, right? So Turin's chasing Saros, poking him and cutting his clothes off and stuff and making him look like an absolute idiot. Now, this creates a big old ruckus, right? Because Turin is running behind this guy yelling, and of course Saros is yelling for his life, and all of the other elves come out to see what's going on. And this is where things go sideways. Not that things hadn't gone sideways already, but real sideways. So they see Turin chasing Saros, and immediately they're like, what the crap, dude? We thought we had settled this yesterday, and now you're going to go try to attack this guy? And Turin gets like real prideful. He's like, I didn't start it. He tried to kill me. And then Beleg gets in the middle of this, and he's like, tell me what's going on. And he's like, I just told you. And he's like, would you explain the situation here? And he's like, if you won't take my word for it, I'm not going to go through it again. And in the middle of all of this stuff, Saros ends up actually dying from all of these sword stabs. And then things get like real bad, because now they're like, well, you just killed one of the sort of lords of Doriath, and that's a pretty bad thing. And Beleg's like, you're going to need to come back, and we're going to have to explain all this to Thingol. And you're going to have to answer for this. And Turin's like, answer for what? I didn't do anything wrong here. I was protecting myself. And Beleg's like, okay, cool, but you're going to have to come and answer to Thingol. And what Turin basically hears in his head is, you're going to get away with this, but you're going to have to suck up to Thingol and play on his pity to do it. And Turin is just like, I'm leaving. I'm just going to leave. And Beleg's like, that is potentially the worst idea that you could do right here. Like, just come back and talk to Thingol. It'll be okay. It'll be fine. And Turin is stubborn, and he refuses. And he leaves Doriath with basically just what's on his back. And this is a pretty rough period of time, right? What do you do as a single guy, like one human, walking around in a world full of bad guys? Well, he kind of makes his way to a region that's called Brethel. Let me zoom in here. So here we have Doriath, again, guarded realm here. He moves across the river over here into this forest, which is not part of the Kingdom of Doriath, but Forest of Brethel, right here. Thingol and ready to mingle. What's up? How's it going, Elsie? Right. So he moves over here. And at that point, there were some men living over here that were remnants of the original kingdoms of men, but they had basically fallen into banditry. They were not doing honorable stuff, right? They were sort of just outlaws running around over here in the forest, waylaying whomever came through and causing trouble with whomever they wanted to, right? Would you like a Pringle Thingol? It's Thingol. And again, it's spelled like this. What's up, Maddie? Good to see you. Anyway, so he gets over into Brethel. This is where things are going to take kind of an interesting twist, because he's going to fall in with these outlaws. And this is kind of not his best moment, because he starts seeing what they're doing. They're sort of preying on the weak, and they are taking advantage of people. And he doesn't really like this, but he is also just really sort of ticked off at the entire situation. So he's not particularly trying to get very much out of this experience. He just wanted somebody to be around, and they were eventually going to kill some orcs, right? So when they ask him his name, he tells them that his name is Nathan, which is the word for wronged. So he says, I am wronged. So people have wronged me. That is my name. And they're like, it's a pretty weird name. And he's like, that's what you're getting. I have been wronged. Because he felt as if he had been unjustly accused by the elves of Doriath. Now, in the midst of all of this, Thingol does end up finding out what actually happened. So he pardons Turin in absentia and makes it very well known that Saros was the cause of all of this. And while Turin did definitely overreact, he did not do so out of pure provocation, and that he would be welcomed back into the realm. So, he's not actually wronged. It's just his pride that won't let him accept the grace, because that is just one step away from pity, right? And he also doesn't know that Thingol has heard all of this stuff, because he didn't wait around long enough for Thingol to figure it out, right? Wasn't it a secret admirer of Turin that cleared him of the murder? Yeah. So there were elves inside of the kingdom of Doriath that were really, really close to him, and some people had sort of seen this stuff happen in the distance, and they went and reported it to Thingol, and Thingol cleared him of the whole scenario. Now, it doesn't take long for Turin, who's over here in the forest of Brethel, to figure out that he doesn't like this outlaw life. It's not really his bag. He wants to be. There's another elf maiden in a little bit later on. You might be thinking about Finduilas, and we'll talk about her. She's from Nargothrond, the other kingdom that we're going to talk about tonight. Was he shrouded? As in, did he wear like a hood, or did he have some sort of magical thing over him? He wasn't at that point particularly showing off his identity, and nobody really knew who he was, because for the last probably 10 or so years, he had been living in Doriath, and nobody really thought that Turin or Húrin had any kids left alive anyway. So he was hiding his identity on purpose by going by the name Nathan. So he doesn't like the outlaw life, and he ends up killing the head of the outlaws in what is only loosely defined as a fair fight. And he ends up taking over the bandits, the outlaws, but he decides that he's going to sort of use them as his band of merry men. So we get a little bit of kind of Robin Hood-esque stuff going here, where he's going to drive out all of the orcs from the region. He's going to start protecting the poor human inhabitants of the area, and he's going to turn his ragtag band of outlaws into an actual really respectable fighting force. And during this time, he's going to end up down here at this place called Amon-Rud, this big hill that sort of pops out of nowhere. There was a secret series of caves in here that was inhabited by a petty dwarf and his sons, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But anyway, so they sort of got their secret hideout, and they are doing the good work, and they've sort of turned back to the good guy side. But the whole time this is happening, and this is happening over the span of several years, Beleg misses his buddy, right? And he asks for Thingol's permission to try to go find Turin. And this is a great pencil sketch here by Alan Lee, one of the more famous illustrators of the Tolkien world. So here's Beleg searching for Turin. He gets to the edge of the river, and he has to go looking for... so the edge of the river is basically the borders of Doriath, and he goes out looking for where Turin is. And as he's traveling around, he starts hearing stories of this leader of men who is doing the good work and fighting the bad guys, and he's brought peace to this area. And Beleg's like, I bet that's my dude. So Beleg ends up finding Turin, and this is a pretty good moment for them, because Turin shows up and finds Beleg, and Beleg is like all excited to see him, and they kind of like, hey, friends, and Beleg's like, you gotta come back, and Turin's like, I'm not gonna. And Beleg's like, no, for real, Thingol has forgiven you, and you're cleared of all of this stuff, and you're good, and everything would be fine. If you just come back, it'll be great. And Turin's like, nah, I don't think so. I still feel like I'd have to sort of like throw myself on the grace of Thingol. That's not really my style. I'm not really going to do that. And Beleg's like, look, dude, you're getting really, really stubborn about this. And Turin's like, that's kind of my thing. I'm the leader of a group of men here. I do whatever I want to. I don't have to listen to anybody telling me what to do. I can make my own commands. I can, send out my own forays. I can attack the bad guys wherever I want to. And Beleg basically has to go back home. And so Beleg goes all the way back to Menegroth, the capital of Doriath, and he tells Thingol what's going on. And Thingol's like, well, look, man, he made his decision. He can come back if he wants to. But for real, we can't really make him, because if we made him, that would basically break him, right? Turin is not somebody that's going to take being captured and dragged back to Doriath lightly. He's a big old guy. We'd have to send a whole bunch of people out there to get him. He's not going to be happy about it. He would try to break out. He would kill people on the way. So if he wants to be out there, look, just let him be out there. We don't like it, but that's what we've got. And then Beleg does something really great here. And one of the sort of, I don't know, kind of more touching moments in the story. Beleg goes, well, look, he's my friend. And I don't want him to be out there by himself. So if you will give me leave, I will go and I will fight with him. And I'll try to help him. I'll try to guide him. I'll try to give him some good advice, and I'll try to get him back, on our side. And Thingol actually has to talk about this a little bit with himself, because Beleg is like one of his big captains, right? Like one of the dudes that's really been doing a lot of good work to keep the kingdom safe. So letting him go is not a light decision. But eventually, Thingol's love for Turin is a real thing. Again, he saw himself sort of as the sort of foster parent of this guy. So Thingol decides, all right, Beleg, what do you need? And Beleg's like, okay, so here's what I'm going to need. I want you to let me have the dragon helm so that I can bring it to him. Maybe this will make him remember what he's fighting for, right? He's the heir of the House of Hedor. He's one of the princes of men. He has a bigger destiny than just hanging out in this little pocket forest with a bunch of former outlaws beating up the occasional orc, right? And Thingol's like, okay, cool, I can give you that. And then Beleg asks for something that is not really expected. He asks for a sword. This sword is Aglakel. This particular sword is a big scary thing. Now, why is this sword such a big deal? Well, it was made by this dark elf named Aol, who was sort of I don't even know how to say this. Like, he was a master craftsman, but everything that he made was jacked up. And the sword is sort of like, I don't even really know how exactly to describe it. Basically, and even when Thingol gives this to him, he goes, look, this blade doesn't really discriminate. It's going to cut anything. It just likes blood. And Beleg's like, I know, but where I'm going to need something that's going to, kick butt. This, by the way, is another sketch here by Alan Lee. So Beleg with Anglakel. And he's like, if you really want the sword, man, I'll give it to you. But, you better be careful, because this thing's got sort of a mind of its own. It's got some sort of weird, quasi-evil presence living in it. But, it'll kill some bad guys, but just be real careful about it. And Beleg's like, all right, I'll do my thing. Now, what's really interesting about this is that what could go wrong, right? What's up, Green Herring? You was thinking of Nellis, yes. She's the one up in the tree that was sort of kept up there by herself, and she saw the whole thing happen with Saros. So, yeah. But there's another one named Finduilas who's actually a Nolda, and we'll talk about her later on, too. Foreshadowing, right. So Interesting moment here, right? Sounds like Maledicta. It's kind of like Maledicta, right? Um, or maybe like the Elder Wand, right? Like it's the most powerful wand ever, but people are going to try to kill you as soon as you get it. There's just like it's super powerful, but there's just bad stuff about it. Um, anyway, Melion is going to make a very rare and incredibly generous gift to Beleg. He is going to tell, them both that he's going to go see Turin, and she's going to go, I've got something for you. And she gives him Limbus. And you're like, wait a second, do you mean that Limbus? I do. Because she is the first person on Middle Earth recorded as knowing how to make Limbus. And it is she that teaches the line of people that ends up teaching our favorite Kate Blanchett character, Galadriel, how to make Limbus, which is how Limbus gets in the hands of the company in Lord of the Rings. This only happens 3 times in the history of Middle Earth, where elves give Limbus to men. And she gives this to him, to Beleg specifically, because winter is setting in. And it's going to be, by all accounts, a really rough winter. So she's like, they're going to need this. Take this to them, and this will help. So Beleg goes back, finds Amon Rud, where the sort of outlaws are hiding out, and sort of picks up the friendship with Turin again. And this is going to be a happy moment for a little while. The region that is right around this area becomes known as Dor Quarthal. When you're like, what the friggin' devil is that? This is the land of helm and bow. Because what they're referring to here is there's a guy with a really big helm. That's really powerful helm. And then there's a guy with a really strong bow, who's Beleg, right? Again, Beleg Cuthalion. And they're the fighters that are keeping this land safe. And it is during this time that Turin is going to take on yet a new name. Because again, none of these people except for Beleg know that he's actually Turin. He's going to change his name to Gorthal, which sounds like an orc name or something like that. But it literally means Dread Helm, which is pretty wicked cool, right? Like, Dreadhelm, there are evil approaching. And he's like, I've got him, don't worry. Right? So things are actually looking kind of okay. Which means it's time for something to go wrong, right? Because, again, he's cursed. So if you'll remember me saying that Amon Rud was originally inhabited by these dwarves, well, one of the only one at that point that's alive is this one named Mim. And he's technically a petty dwarf, which is a subspecies of dwarf, and we necessarily don't have time to go into all of that stuff because we're already going to... well, I mean, we're doing okay pace-wise, but we've still got a lot of stuff to talk about. So, Mim had sort of befriended Turin in this process, and when Beleg shows up, there's a little bit of jealousy going on here, because dwarves and elves already, you know how that goes, not necessarily the best of friends. And here comes Beleg stealing Turin away, and Turin is not really palling around with Mim anymore. And Beleg was also sort of around when there's this whole story about Mim's son, and he ended up dying because he had been captured, Mim, by the crew and forced to take them back to Amon Rud, where he was staying. And in the process of them sort of keeping him away, one of his sons died, and he had never really forgiven them of this. Right. They're known for holding on to minor complaints. Yes. Lots and lots of bad things still to come. Yes. We're not even halfway through the bad things, and we're not even to the worst things, right? See petty, right? I know that's a funny joke, but it actually does sort of work. At that point, petty just meant minor, not the way that we use it today to mean like purposefully butthole-ish, right? So there are some orcs that are sort of in the area, and they end up catching Meme, and he may have even let them catch him. I don't know. Anyway, he gets caught by the orcs, and they're about to kill him, and he goes, wait, I've got some information that you might be interested in. And they're like, okay, what's this information? And he goes, I know where the helm and the bow live. And the orcs had been trying to look for this secret hideout for years now, and they could never find it, and they could never track them back because Beleg and Húrin were both such good fighters that they would kill any spies or anybody trying to tail them. And so this is an interesting scenario. Like, wait, you know where they are? And he's like, oh yeah, they're living with me, and I don't really want them around anymore. Hey, you gotta stop licking, right? The dog is behind me, and she's licked another hot spot on her leg because she can't stop licking herself for whatever reason. Anyway, yeah, so the orcs are kind of like, okay, go on. Yeah, this is great. And Mim makes a deal with them. He's like, so here's the deal. I will lead you back to where the bad guys are, Húrin, Beleg, and the crew. But the deal is, you've got to let me kill the elf. And the orcs are like, dude, no problem. If we can get rid of both of those, that'd be like, excelente. And if you just want to kill one elf, that's fine. Total deal. So they get sold out. And the orcs are going to attack. They know how to get into the secret caves and into the secret pathway. And Húrin is basically going to sort of be the last one standing. Now, Beleg manages to escape. All of the other men are going to die. And Húrin sort of stands by himself. Amandin was this sort of tall, flat-topped hill. And there was sort of a green space on top of it that you could kind of stand up on and look out over the region. It had a kind of a stairway that would pop up in the back of it. And Húrin basically stands at the top of this stairway and just kills orcs until they literally just overwhelm him to the point that he can't fight anymore. And because he's such a powerful warrior, they're like, oh crap, like we probably should take this guy back because he's not just a regular guy. So they capture Húrin, and things at this point are pretty bad. Now, around this time, Morgoth, sensing that the time was more or less right, had let some captives go. And he did this pretty frequently as just a way to screw with people. He would capture people and keep them for a century or two and torture them and warp their minds and really just do a number on these people and then kind of let them go again. Because to him, it was just fun to see the reaction of their family when they realized, oh, look, it's, Dad. And he's been gone for 200 years. These are elves, of course. And he's going to be back, and then he's not back. But one of the elves that had been released at this time was this guy named Gwendor. And Gwendor had been in captivity for a long time. And when Morgoth releases him, he's kind of a broken individual. He was trying to make his way down to Nargothrond, where some of his family lived. And Gwendor is basically out in the woods just wandering because, again, he's been tortured for a long time. He's kind of messed up in the head. But he runs into Beleg. And Beleg is like, holy crap, you're Gwendor. And he's like, yes. there are some who call me that. Like he's kind of messed up. And Beleg's like, have you seen a big party of orcs come this way? And he's like, oh yeah, there's a big old, group of orcs. And they kind of ran down that way. And there was a man with them, like a human, and they had him captive. And Beleg is like, that's got to be Húrin. So we've got to go save him. And Gwendor's like, dude, I'm going to be for real. I'm not going to be the world's best fighter. I'm not even really sure I'm kind of all here. But Beleg is like, you'll know him. You just track him with me, and you help me out, do whatever you can, and it'll all be good. And Gwendor's like, okay, cool. They went this way. So Beleg and Gwendor are on the tail of the orcs, and the goal here, rescue Húrin again, because Beleg is like all about some rescuing Húrin. They're homies, right? So in the process of dragging Húrin towards Angband, the big bad location, right? The orcs had started torturing Húrin. They would beat him. They would try to get information out of him. They would just do all this horrible, horrible stuff to him, right? And they had him tied up really, really tight because they knew that he was super strong. So they had all of these like cords and stuff on his arms and his legs so that he couldn't move. And they were just giving him a real bad time of stuff, right? So Húrin is in captivity. Beleg and Gwendor find him, and Beleg's like, look, I'm going to sneak in at night. I'll wait till things go real, real dark, and I'll sneak into the camp. I'll pick Húrin up, and we'll just book it. And Gwendor's like, okay, cool. If you can get him out here, I can help you. So Beleg sneaks in and gets Húrin, and gets him out of the camp, and they get him out under this big tree, and they're going to use this sort of as cover because they want to cut all of these bonds. Now, Húrin had basically been sort of fainted, right? Because he had just had the crap kicked out of him, and he had just gone through a long period of torture, so he was sort of like unconscious during all of this stuff. And in the midst of this, it's very, very dark, and Beleg is trying to cut these cords on him, and he's using Aglakel, the big sword, right? Which is Aglakel. And in the process of doing this, it starts raining, and so it's dark and it's raining, and these cords are really tight, and Beleg slips with the blade, and he cuts Húrin. And at that point, Húrin like kind of half came out of the unconsciousness and just saw this dark figure standing over him and knew that he had been cut. And he found his arms free of his arms and his legs free of the bindings. So his first response was, kill it. And he reaches around and he grabs Aglakel and he stabs Beleg. We've got a great image of this. This is by one of the sort of great illustrators of Middle Earth, a guy named Ted Naismith. So this is Gwendor here. This is Húrin standing over the stabbed and now dying Beleg. And here we see Aglakel, which is going to turn jet black. It's going to basically, the way that it's described in the book, it's going to drink Beleg's blood. And it's going to turn jet black as a sword blade. And it's also going to go straight dull. And in the midst of all of this, Húrin sort of like loses his mind, because he comes to a little bit long enough for Gwendor to go, dude, that you just straight killed Beleg. Like that wasn't an orc. That was a good guy. And Húrin is just like, what the heck, man? what did I just do? And this rips him apart because Belek had been like the steadfast ally. He'd been the guy that was always there, the guy that was sort of always on his side. So, welcome to Children of Turin, right? Now, Gwendor is going to basically have to take over care of Turin. And they're going to make their way south to Nargothrond. Nargothrond is one of the big kingdoms of the elves. It's right down here, so this is the realm of Nargothrond. It is basically in these hills, and the entrance is this hidden cave that goes down into these sort of larger chambers down in here. So nobody really knew where the entrance was unless you were sort of inducted into the, kind of secret handshake kind of situation, basically. So Nargothrond was another one of these hidden kingdoms that was trying to hold out against Morgoth. And it was protected as well. Right here you can see Taur and Falroth. This is the forest of the hunters. So Taur is a word for forest, and Falroth is hunter. Taur and Falroth is forest of the hunters. So basically, if you got down in here, the elves were going to hunt you, right? That was the thing. So Gwendor knows how to get there because Gwendor was from there, and he's going to get Turin down into Nargothrond. And he's going to start trying to basically work to heal this guy because he's, at this point, experienced some for real psychic mess. Pretty rough stuff, just kind of, as a baseline. And this is going to be kind of a thing. Now, here's an important thing to get here. Turin is cursed by Morgoth, right? He is not ever necessarily going to have what we would call a normal life. But his name, there's so much reference on the names that he's taking, right? He's taking these names. There's so much emphasis on his name, and Turin starts to think that his name is literally cursed, right? So this is why he never used it with the men of Brethil, and this is why he's not going to use it when he's in Nargothrond. Now, there are a few people, a very, very small group of elves that know that he is actually Turin. Beleg had told Gwendor, so Gwendor knows. Gwendor is going to tell the ruler of Nargothrond, who is an elf named Orodreth. Now, Orodreth was a prince of the elves. He wasn't in line to be the High King. He was from the line of Finarfin, which was one of Feanor's brothers. But he was a prince. So he's basically the king of Nargothrond, but he's sort of counted as the sort of nobility of the Noldor elves. So he knows, and that's about it. And when Turin sort of comes to, he tells Orodreth and Gwendor, do not tell anybody my name. I do not want anyone to know that I am Turin, son of Húrin. It's just, I don't want them to know. And they're like, well, what are we going to call you? And so he comes up with, as you might expect, another name. What does he call himself this time? He calls himself Agarwain, son of Umarth. Now, you're like, that's a horrible name, Agarwain. That sounds like Party on, Agarwain. No, Agarwain means bloodstained. So Agarwain, son of Umarth, it means bloodstained, the son of ill fate. That's a pretty rough name, right? Like, hi, who are you? My name is Bloodstained, and my father's name is Ill Fate. It's a bad name to take for yourself, right? If you get to rename yourself, you probably wouldn't go with this one. But this is, again, sort of like, sounds like a bunch of... Exactly. What's up, Tanker? He was very subtle with the name choices, exactly. This is what he thinks that he is. He thinks that he's bloodstained. And here's the difference between like when he named himself Nathan, which again was the wronged, he wasn't actually wronged. When he names himself bloodstained, he is legit bloodstained now, because he killed his best friend Beleg. And he is the son of ill fate because he's not had good luck. So if we look at the evolution of the names that he takes for himself, he's actually getting closer to accurate now, right? This one's fairly accurate. What's up, Cave? Good to see you, man. But the thing that we should get out of this constant renaming here is that Turin is really convinced that this curse of Morgoth thing literally is a curse on his name. Turin was cursed with a flair for the melodramatic. Right? He's the son of a mortal man who was cursed personally by Morgoth. Yeah, let's not forget that. Morgoth was the strongest individual god on the planet. Not the strongest overall. That's Iluvatar, but he's not on the planet. He's up in the, also Gary was already taken. There are those who call me Tim. Funny thing about that, there was originally a name for the enchanter. So this is from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. There was an original name for the enchanter, and it was supposed to be like this long thing that sounded Welsh, like, lots of THs and Gs and Ws and stuff. And the guy playing Tim the Enchanter, John Cleese, literally forgot the name of it. And so he just ad-libbed Tim. And then the rest of the cast was just like, yeah, okay, greetings, O Tim. And they just ran with it. Anyway, History of Monty Python is not what we're doing here. We're doing History of Middle-earth, and I can't chase too many tangents because we've still got a lot of story left. Okay, so we're in Nargothrond. We've renamed ourselves Bloodstained, the son of ill fate. What are we going to do? The way that they rolled with it is better than any other part of that. Right? What do we do now? What do you do if you are, if you're Turin? Just wait, there's plenty more Doom in store, indeed. Including the Master of Doom, but we're not quite there yet. So retire. Yeah, you just retire because you've had such a horrible life and things have gone so badly for you. You just take a time for yourself, right? You go on a bit of a sabbatical from killing the bad guys. Of course not. Of course not. You don't do that because you're Turin and you're sort of got one setting, and that is find the bad guys and go kill them. So he gets the Elves of Nargothrond to reforge Aglakel, and he turns it into Gurthang. So the sword that he had used to kill his friend is going to get reforged into a black-bladed death machine named Gurthang, which literally means Iron of Death. Not ominous or anything. Not big and scary and bad or anything like that. Just Iron of Death. Yeah, what's the name of your sword? Iron of Death. Okay, why is it black? It drank the blood of my best friend after I stabbed him in the gut. Right. Now, if that wasn't weird enough, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to start killing again. Here I go killing again. By the way, this is an image of Orodreth, who is, again, the king of Nargothrond. I forgot to show you his picture. Now, what's interesting in Nargothrond is we have this elf maiden here. This elf maiden's name is Finduilas. And she's Orodreth's daughter, so she's the princess of the kingdom. Now, I should put her here. Finduilas. Turin would definitely have been in drama club in high school. I don't know. I don't think that he would be in drama club. he might join drama club and then realize that he doesn't get to be a director as well, and then go off and do a one-man play at the local one-room theater in town. And then when everybody started going to his show, one person would write a bad review of him, and then he'd end up at the offices of the newspaper and end up killing him with a stapler and then having to run away from the law. So that's probably more accurate to what Húrin would end up doing if he were, if he had a flair for drama in high school. I don't understand how I can do stuff like that, but that's pretty actually funny. That's pretty close to what he would do. Anyway, Finduilas, she's the princess. She's also Gwyndor's special girl. Gwyndor is in total love with Finduilas. Could have been cursed stapler. Yeah, it would have to be a cursed stapler. It would be the stapler that survived the end of Office Space, right? It was originally Melvin's stapler, and it survived the fire at Initech, and Peter pulled it out of the rubble. But in the process, he cut his finger trying to give it to Melvin, and he got really, really bad infection and ended up dying from sepsis. And then Húrin is Melvin's son, who ends up, inheriting the stapler. I don't even know what I'm doing now. Right? Anyway, it's a big mess. So Finduilas is the princess, and Gwyndor is in love with her. Húrin knows that Gwyndor is in love with Finduilas, and here's where the problem comes in. Húrin is also in love with Finduilas. And here's where the real big problem comes in. Finduilas is in love with Húrin and not Gwyndor. Oh, the love triangles. And this one is especially bad, because what are you going to do when the princess of an elf realm loves a down-on-his-luck human that's really, really good at fighting? The answer is you try to send her to the West and you get Liv Tyler to play her in the movie. That's just a joke. As long as there's no dwarf involved. No, the dwarfs are already out of the picture, at least for the moment. We'll talk about, well, yeah, we're good for the moment. Anyway, so we've got a love triangle here, and two of the people are in love. Well, all three of them are in love, and only two of them are in love with each other. And this is really under the skin of Gwyndor. Like, he knows that Finduilas actually loves Húrin. It just doesn't sit really well with him, though. Because, again, Húrin is a human. And Gwyndor is, well, I mean, he endured all of this time and torture thinking that he could go back and fall back in love with Finduilas. But again, he's very much a broken elf. He is not the same kind of person. And Finduilas is like, I mean, mad respect for holding out, the massive amounts of torture that you went through. But it's going to be a no from me. I'd rather, place my affection in this man who's got the broody eyes, like he's just had such a bad life and I can fix him. And Finduilas is actually thinking, like, as misogynistic as it might have been for Tolkien to do this, she's like, I can fix him and find my value in fixing him. Anyway, so there's this one particular point where Gwyndor just gets really, really upset at Finduilas. He's like, look, I want to marry you. We were kind of going to do this anyway. Can we just get married? And Finduilas is like, she doesn't really give the answer real quick. And so Gwyndor does something kind of bad. And he goes, so you know that guy that you call Agarwain? That's actually Húrin, and he's the son of Húrin. So he's been cursed by Morgoth. So if you really want to hang out with that guy, you're going to end up in trouble. And this is revealing his name. Right? And Húrin had sort of made this a clear thing, like, I don't want you to reveal my name. Don't do it. And here goes Gwyndor spilling the beans. And this really, really makes Turin mad. To the point that Gwendor is like, I'm going to go over here. And Turin basically kind of falls back into this thing of, well, I guess if I'm going to be Turin, the only way that I can do anything is find the bad guy and go kill him. So he starts getting into the council of Orodreth. Orodreth is a younger king than Thingol was. Thingol's got probably a couple thousand years on Orodreth. Thingol was born before there was a sun, right? So he's been out there for a while. Anyway, I don't. Well, now that I say that, I don't actually know if Orodreth was born before the sun. That's possible. I should probably look at that. Now that I'm thinking about it, he might have been born in the Age of the Trees. I think he actually was born in the Age of the Trees, during the Golden Age where everything was going good before the trees died. Anyway, Thingol is older than Orodreth by a long time, and had been in the world fighting Morgoth a lot longer than Orodreth had. Orodreth was also very much not proven. He had been given pretty much this castle named Minas Tirith, the OG Minas Tirith, to guard, and had lost it, and had basically regained the crown of Nargothrond because everybody in front of him in the line died. So he's not necessarily a what we might call a powerful leader that has a lot of success to build on. So here comes Turin, who is by all means battle tested, and he starts getting in the mind of Orodreth. Like, look, dude, for real here, you gotta go out and fight the orcs. And Orodreth is like, I mean, what do you want to do? And Turin is like, give me some soldiers. I'll go lead them out, and we'll go fight, and we'll go kill the orcs. And Orodreth is like, well, I mean, killing orcs does seem like a good thing. But again, Nargothrond is a hidden kingdom. And one of the things that Turin goes is, we need to build a big old bridge so we can get over the river faster. Because the river that ran right in front of Nargothrond was part of their defense structure, right? But it also kept them from moving in and out of the caves really fast with large numbers of elves. And Orodreth is like, nah, I don't really want to do that. But like, if you want some rangers, or if you want some, here I say rangers as like, people that are going to go out in the range, not like rangers as in men of the north. We haven't even gotten to the second age. There's no such thing as a Númenórean yet. Right? So Orodreth gives him some soldiers. And it's at this point that he renames himself. So Turin is going to stop being Turin again, and he's going to take up the name Mormagil. Dun, 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 dun. Mormagil is Black Sword. A bit on the nose, not particularly over dramatic here, but Mormagil. And what is he going to do? He's going to go out and start killing some orcs. Well, it turns out when you start killing a bunch of orcs, the big bad is going to recognize that every time he sends orcs in that direction, orcs don't come back from that direction. So there must be some bad guys in that direction. They must be pretty strong. And to be fair here, Turin's real good at killing orcs. At this point, the people in Nargothrond basically start calling him like Elfman, because he was so much like a great elf warrior that he had sort of surpassed what would be expected of a regular old man. Did you think Char was bad with a number of aliases? Right? There is also headgear here, by the way, because he's once again wearing the Helm of Dorloman, and the Helm of Dorloman has a mask on it. It was made by the dwarves. It's got a mask to endure dragonfire. So your connection here to Shar is not so bad, Tad. It's a fairly accurate one, all right? So Mormagil's going out killing the bad guys, and Morgoth is like, we're going to go kill some people, and I think I know where they are now. And so they start sending more and more numbers, and what ends up happening is there's finally going to be a moment where Turin convinces Orodreth to build the bridge, right? So we need to march out in force. We need to go meet the bad guy in a battle, and we can take him because I'm going to be there, and we're going to have the might of the Noldor behind us, and everything's going to be going great, and it's amazing. And Orodreth is like, okay, dude, if you think so. So they build the bridge, and they're starting to go out, but it's at this point that Morgoth sort of lets out, you know, what is effectively the nuclear weapon of the ancient world, and that is Glaurung, who is literally the father of dragons. What's up, Uncle Bill? So Glaurung gets put at the front of the army, and there's a great picture here by Alan Lee, and this is called The Approach of Glaurung, because basically what Morgoth says is burn everything between here and there. And so Glaurung goes out and just starts wrecking everything. It is a great painting. I mean, it's Alan Lee, dude. Like, Alan Lee is such an amazing artist. But just you see this sort of like, I don't know. You can talk all about this all you want to. Does Glaurung come up in every Middle-earth stream? I mean, Glaurung is a big old bad scary dude, right? He's the trump card where if you're going to, if you're going to try to, play the ace of spades on somebody, he's the most powerful card in the deck, right? I summon you, Blue Eyes White Glaurung, right? You all probably didn't expect a Yu-Gi-Oh reference in this show, but there is one. Boom. Anyway, this is going to be a big old battle, and it's going to come to a head. Deep cut. Loved it. At a place called Tumalad. And this is just north of Nargothrond. Let me get back to my map here. So here's Nargothrond. Again, the secret entrance is just here on the river. They build a big old bridge so that they can get out and up north. And here is Tumhalad. Basically, the Tumas Field and Halad it's basically the space between two valleys. So you can see here, two rivers form this. Narog is the river that is the very, very swift, very, very deep channel that keeps Nargothrond safe. They built the bridge over it. They come up here, and they're going to fight at Tumhalad. And it don't go good. It don't go good at all. It's about as bad as it could be. About as bad as it could be. Orodreth is going to end up getting crushed by Glaurung and dies. None of the elves that go survive. The only survivor, you guessed it, it's Turin. And the reason that he survives is because he is wearing the dragon helm of Dorloman, and it has the face mask, which was designed by the dwarves to be able to withstand dragon fire. And he's the only one that makes it out. Now, there's more to that particular part of the story, but this is called the Children of Húrin, not just the Child of Húrin. So we need to take a brief respite and go back to Morwen, who is Turin's mother, and his new sister that he'd never met, named Nienor, who is this young lady. All right. Now, again, Turin never met his sister because his mom was still pregnant with her when his mom sent him off to Doriath to begin with. Now, the situation in Dorloman had become quite bad, and some of the elves had made their way up to Dorloman and told Morwen about what had happened with Turin, and they basically plead with her, please come back to Doriath. Thingol has extended his welcome to you. You and your daughter Nienor would be welcome in his kingdom. Please come to Doriath. Please. So they eventually agree. Now, what's really interesting here, and this is again sort of this weird twist of fate that allows all of this stuff to happen. The mechanism that allowed for Morwen and Nienor to get out of Dorloman and into Doriath was Morgoth's focus being on crushing Nargothrond, where Turin was. So Turin effectively killed the king of the elves in Nargothrond, and in doing so saved his mother and his sister. It's just one of these weird things that Tolkien came up with. It's just kind of brilliant. It's horrible situations. Anyway, so Morwen and Nienor get to Doriath and they're safe, and this is happening at the same time that they're fighting this big battle between the dragon and all these orcs and the fighting force of Nargothrond. Now, that's kind of the ellipsis here. But back to our boy Turin. What is he doing? Well, Turin gets this idea after the battle that he's going to basically try to sneak back into Nargothrond and save all of the other elves, including Finduilas. But Glaurung gets there first. And because there's a big bridge right in front of the opening, everybody knows how to get into Nargothrond. So the orcs go in, and the dragon sort of like goes into the caves, and they catch all of the elves, and Turin is trying to sneak in across the bridge, and Glaurung puts the eye whammy on him. Now, Glaurung is a magical being and has magical power. And what he basically does is he locks eyes with Turin, and he freezes him in place. And as he freezes him in place, Glaurung marches all of the elves of Nargothrond out of the kingdom, or out of the palace area under the ground, and off towards slavery to Angband. And the last one that he marches by is Finduilas. And Turin is basically frozen there, and he's aware of all of this stuff. He just can't move. And Finduilas is yelling for him to save her as she's being dragged off into the captivity of what is almost certain torment. And this is like real bad stuff here. And Glaurung recognizes who Turin is because of the dragon helm, and puts two and two together and goes, "You're Turin, son of Húrin." And then he goes, "Guess what, bud? We just wrecked Nargothrond, and Dorloman is next." And again here, Turin doesn't know that his mom and his sister have made it out. He doesn't even know that his sister exists. But what is happening here is Glaurung is playing a trick, because Glaurung respected the fact that Turin was a powerful dude and didn't really want him hounding their forces all the way back to Angband. So what he decides to do is he plants this sort of incepted thought bomb into Turin and goes, "Your home is next." So they get far enough away that Turin can't really catch up to him, and Glaurung releases the whammy on him. And then Turin has to make a decision. Does he try to go save Finduilas, the elf that he loves, or does he go try to save his mother? Because he doesn't know any of all this. He doesn't just functionally know that any of this stuff is working. And he decides to go try to save his mom. And he makes his way back to Dorloman by himself. I'm trying to remember, did Glaurung not kill Turin because Morgoth didn't want him killed? Glaurung didn't kill Turin because Glaurung was an evil bugger and enjoyed causing torment. Probably because, he was Morgoth's creation. I don't think that there was a specific ban against killing Turin. I'm pretty sure that if Morgoth had known that Glaurung would run into Turin, he would have been like, "Yeah, you just should go ahead and kill that guy." I don't think there's any sort of protective power. Like, if you could endure his torment some more, just make him endure more torment. I don't think that was there. I could be wrong, though. But Glaurung was just evil. and pretty nasty at it. So when Turin gets back to his homeland of Dorloman, things are bad. Things are real bad, right? The Easterlings who had been put in charge of that area had completely overrun it. There was only one person left two people left that were in sort of the old House of Hador. One of them was this guy that was the sort of the childhood friend. There's this soldier named Sador who had gone to one of the battles and basically become lame. And because Morwen was a caring individual, had taken Sador in, and Sador had sort of helped raise Turin as a sort of a family friend. He ends up dying basically right before Turin can do anything to help him, and Turin has to watch him die, and that's really horrible. And then there's this other lady who is just described as a kinswoman, so probably a cousin or an aunt or something, whose name is Erin. She's kind of like the last of the line of Hador. And she had been forced into marrying this Easterling named Broda. And Turin finds this out, and he's like, why did you agree to marry him? Like, this is horrible. What are you doing? And she goes, look, dude, there's nobody left. Your mom's not here anymore. No one's protecting us. I had to do what I had to do to try to help the people out. And Turin just doesn't understand this. He's like, you're full of junk, and this is a bad move. And she's like, you don't understand. The people that swore loyalty to the House of Hador are the ones that are already super persecuted. And you've been gone for, like 20 plus years. Things have changed a lot since you've been here. You really don't understand what's going on. And Turin is like, I'll just go kill Broda and I'll take everything over. And she's like, did you hear a word of what I was saying? Like, you're just completely out of control here. And Turin was just like, I'm going to find the bad guy and I'm going to go kill him. So he ends up killing Broda. And by doing so, the Easterlings start to basically turn on all of the people that were at one time or another loyal to the House of Hador. And they start going for Erin, who they suspect played some role in this. And Erin, who is probably at this point the only living relative that Turin knew that he had, decides to burn herself alive in her house instead of being taken by the mob. And so Turin gets to watch that happen too. Which of course is not so great. It's bad news. So what do you do then? Your mom's not there. You don't know where she is. You suspect that she's in Doriath, but you don't know that for certain. You don't know if she got there safely or not. What do you got to go do? Well, if you can't find Mom, you try to go find the elf that you love. So you go look for Finduilas. And he sets out to find Finduilas. And he basically finds this sort of tumulus. And there's a big stone there that is her gravestone because he waited too long and she died. And he lies down on her grave and basically kind of surrenders himself to fate. What's up, Sienna? Thuringia? Not quite, but close. Anyway, he's kind of broken. This is sort of the lowest point that he had been into. Turin's making another bad decision after another. Yeah, pretty much. So he decides to give himself a new name. because that's worked every other time, right? So he calls himself Turambar, which is the Master of Doom. Turambar, the Master of Doom. Renamed Morgoth, which confuses nobody, right? Turambar. And he does this because he sort of thinks that at this point, Morgoth doesn't have anything else to take from him, right? Literally the only thing left is his life. And he gets to control what he does with his life. So he's now the Master of Doom. Which is kind of a scary thing if you understand what he's capable of. Like, he really feels at this point like he has been completely unshackled. Like, he's got nothing left that really connects him to the living world. So he finds that he actually does have a second setting after all. The first setting is, find the bad guy and kill it. The second setting is kill everything without regard for your own life. And this is some scary stuff. This is some real scary stuff here. Because he's a powerful guy. He's really, really strong, and he's one of the best fighters alive at that time. And his weapon is one of the more powerful weapons, and he's got an enchanted helm that allows him to endure dragon fire. And it's the dude's kind of statistically stacked, right? Not so high on the wisdom stat, but lots of strength and pretty good dexterity, pretty heavy on the constitution. Anyway, so let's pause here and take a chapter in the other child of Húrin, Nienor. So what's going on with them? Well, they get to Doriath and they meet Thingol. Things are going okay. Stuff is more or less unsettled there, though. Word gets to them that the Battle of Tumhalad has gone horribly awry, and that the entire kingdom of Nargothrond has been upended. The king is dead, the people taken captive, and the army is basically just utterly destroyed. And Morwen and Nienor decide that they're going to go look for Turin because they feel like that he's still alive. And this is another tough situation because Thingol's like, you really don't want to go out there right now. Like, you really, really don't want to go out there. Because Glaurung had basically gathered all of the treasure of Nargothrond into the big entry chamber and had turned that into his house. And Thingol's like, you don't know what you're going to get into. You don't need to go out there. You really, really shouldn't do it. And Morwen is where Turin gets a lot of his stubbornness from. And she's like, we're going to go. We're just going to go. And okay, cool. Do your thing. Go for it. And they set out looking for Turin. And they're sort of wandering through the woods, right? They've got some elves with them that are trying to act as a guide, but they really don't know where Turin would be. They don't know where he would have gone. And they run into magic. And Morwen is trapped in an enchanted fog, and she gets sort of lost and separated from Nienor. And Nienor runs into Glaurung, who puts the eye whammy on her and freezes her. And knowing how the mind works of humans, he sort of figures out that this is another child of Húrin, and that she would be the sister of Turin, and kind of figures out that Turin doesn't really know she exists. And so Glaurung puts her under a spell of amnesia and basically wipes her mind. Yeah, their luck is about to change for the better. Yep. So Nienor gets entranced. She loses the ability to speak, and she sort of goes crazy, and runs off through the woods. And as she's running, she basically starts shucking off all of her clothes until she's running naked through the woods. Now, this is a callback to the words of Saros, who said, "Are the women so wild that they run around naked?" Right? That's really big foreshadowing that Kyle mentioned earlier, but I call back to now. And she basically has no recollection of who she was or how to speak or what's going on. So she gets taken in by some men who had sort of survived all of this stuff again. Where is this place again asking for me? Where is what place again? Nargothrond? So this is in the first age, so the map looks way different. If we look at the map again, so Doriath is here. This is where Thingol lived. The place where we're running around... Okay. That would be basically in this larger region right around here. Sort of the wilderness in this region. So broadly here. Anyway, do we have pictures for that? Not that I can share because Twitch TOS is, not going to let me. Anyway, so she gets taken in by a small group of woodsmen, and the woodsmen they find this beautiful naked girl running around in the woods, and they're like, okay, so something's up, and they take her in and they start treating her, and she gets some of her words back and starts kind of coming back into some of her accountability, but she can't remember anything. Now, Húrin, after naming himself the Master of Doom, decides that it's time for him to go killing again. So he goes off and goes killing again, and he's killing anything that looks like a bad guy anywhere that he goes, and he runs into this same group of the same little village of woodmen, and they're like, "Oh crap, you're like a big straight up elf warrior dude." And he's like, "I'm not an elf, I'm a guy." And they're like, "We could really use your help because there's like a whole bunch of bad guys around here." And he's like, I really don't know. And then he sees Nienor, and he's like, "Oh, okay, who's that?" And they're like, "We really don't know what her name is. She's lost in the woods. We took her in. We're trying to help her out, and we could really use some help." And Turin's like, "You know what? Okay, cool. You need help. I need something. I guess that's some kind of purpose in my life." So he sort of joins up with them, and Nienor constantly cries because she just can't remember anything about her. So Húrin, names her Niniel. Well, let me put a hash there. Niniel. And this is Maiden of Tears. And he falls in love with her. And he helps nurse her back to health, and she falls in love with him. And so they get married. And she gets pregnant. And around this time, Glaurung had been causing a lot of trouble down in Nargothrond, the ruins of Nargothrond, and had been venturing forth and causing a lot of trouble. And Húrin decides that it would be the great work of his life to go kill Glaurung. And so he comes up with this plan. And the plan is that he's going to watch Glaurung go out and watch his route in and out of Nargothrond. And so he goes and he scouts this, and he watches it, and he watches it, and he watches. And he finds a place where Glaurung jumps over this gully. And Húrin gets this idea that he's going to go out and use this to his advantage. And for the first time, I will show you a picture of Húrin Turambar. So this is Húrin, the Master of Doom, standing out watching the bad guys, wearing his dragon helm and sporting his black sword Again, another absolutely amazing Alan Lee painting. This is what's on the cover of the Children of Húrin book, if you desire to go get it. Is this going to be the basis for Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? Nothing nearly that lighthearted. So, the plan. Húrin going to get down in this gully, and when Glaurung moves over the top of the gully, he's going to stab him in the gut with his cursed black sword Gurthang. And people are like, this is a big thing here. Like, I don't know, man. That's kind of a scary plan. And he's like, look, I'm going to go do it. Is anybody going to come with me? And two of the woodsmen agree to go with him. And neither of them make the climb up to this gully. They both end up dying. So he's standing by himself. And here's the bad part. He had told everybody, I'm going to go kill the dragon. Do not follow me. It's going to get bad. But his wife, Niniel, didn't listen to that. She's like, if you're going to go fight, dude, I'm going to be there with you to back you up. And he had forbidden her to go, but she had sneaked out. The leader of the woodsmen, who had fallen in love with her prior to Húrin showing up, she sort of lays the come hither eyes on him and gets him to take her out to where Húrin had this plan going. So, unbeknownst to Húrin, Nienor is basically coming out to try to help him. So, Húrin gets down in the gully. Glaurung is going to go out on his daily, going to go kill some stuff, trek. And as he's leaping over, Húrin stabs him in the gut with the sword. And it was a mighty blow. And it struck deep into his organs, and the dragon was struck a mortal wound. This is another Ted Naismith image here. Really friggin' cool stuff. So Húrin stabbing into Glaurung. And there is a great and powerful roar that goes up. And as soon as that happens, Nienor, who, is waiting to hear news about Húrin or waiting to see what's going on with Húrin, gets really excited and starts going in that direction. Now, Húrin is going to basically climb out of the ravine and get up to Glaurung, basically to kind of taunt him. This is another Alan Lee pencil sketch here. So here we have the dying Glaurung and Húrin, who is getting up there to go, you killed the people that I love, forget you, I hate your guts, and you're dead now. There is some Nordic tale that this is roughly based on. At last, this miserable dragon is going to die. Correct. But he's not done yet. Because Glaurung is not dead. I'm not dead yet. And he puts another whammy on Húrin. And he puts him into a sleep such as death. Basically, he knocks him so deeply unconscious that he looks like he's dead. It's a bad thing. So, with the cry, Nienor rushes to aid Húrin. When she shows up, she sees a half-dead dragon and Húrin, who is in such a swoon that he appears to be dead. And Nienor is like, oh, this sucks. And Glaurung sees her. And he's like, oh, I remember you. And so he reverses the amnesia spell. And he goes, your husband there, that's your brother, Húrin. And your name is Nienor. And you married your brother and you're pregnant with his kid. And now he's dead. So, guess what? You get to raise that kid by yourself. And Nienor is so grief-struck by this particular moment that she runs up to the gorge, right? So there's this big gap in the mountains where the river's running through it. And she jumps off of the mountain into the river and ends her life. And they never find her body. And that is the end of Niniel, the Maiden of Tears. It's like an episode of Montel. Yeah, it's kind of rough. It's not done either. As soon as Glaurung sees what's happened here, Glaurung dies. And when he dies, Turin is released from the sleep. And he gets up and he sees the leader of the woodsman village. And he's like, "What are you doing out here?" And the guy says, I brought Niniel out here because she wanted to see you. And Turin's like, "Dude, I specifically told you all not to come out here because this is going to be super dangerous. Where is she?" And and the leader of the woodsmen goes, "She jumped off the cliff and she's dead." And Turin got so angry that he just killed the guy because he thought he was lying. So he uses his cursed sword and kills the leader of the woodsmen that had been giving him shelter for the past several, months. And it's around this time that one of the elven scouts who had been sent out to try to find Morwen and Nienor shows back up. This guy's name is Mablung. And having seen the entire scenario goes, "Turin, what the crap are you doing?" And he's like, "That dude lied and said that my wife just jumped off the cliff and that she was my sister. And, there's a big mess and he was just a liar." And Mablung, the elf from Doriath, is like, "No, that's legit what just happened. Like, I watched it happen. And yes, that was your sister, Nienor. And clearly the dragon had put her under some sort of spell. And you just got like dragon whammied again." And Turin gets, at that point, just like, he's done. And he walks up to the point where his wife / sister jumped off. And there's this really wicked story. And this is in the book. He looks at the sword, right? The cursed sword. And I copied it down because this is such a weird story, but it's also such a horrible moment. He looks at the sword and he says, "Hail Gurthang." So he's like talking to the sword. "No lord or loyalty dost thou know, save the hand that wieldeth thee. From no blood wilt thou shrink. Wilt thou therefore take Turin Terambar? Wilt thou slay me swiftly?" And that's not the creepy part. The creepy part is that a voice comes out of the sword and it says, "Yea, I will drink thy blood gladly. That so I might forget the blood of Beleg my master, and the blood of Brandir slain unjustly, I will slay thee swiftly." Which is real twisted stuff. And so Turin places the sword hilt on the ground and falls on his sword at the space where his sister / wife jumped off into the river. So this is another Alan Lee painting, and you can see the dead dragon here in the background and him with the sword out his back. And that's where they buried him. The grave of Turin gets built on this region, which becomes known as Niniel's Leap, or the Deer's Leap. And a big stone gets put there with Turin's name on it, Turin Turambar, and also his sister / wife, Nienor, on it. But that's not even the end of the story, because things are still not good. Now, at this point, let's not forget that Húrin has been stuck on top of a mountain, and having been given magical sight by Morgoth, has watched all of this happen to his children. He watched his first daughter Orwen die of a plague. He watched all of this happen to Turin, and he watched this happen to Nienor. And at that point, Morgoth goes, "You've got nothing left, bud. I think I'm going to let you go now." So Húrin gets released. And he's a bit bitter, as one would be, after being forced to magically watch Morgoth curse your children and then destroy their lives. And so he decides that he's going to be a bit petty. So he goes all the way down by himself to the ruins of Nargothrond, which are now basically open because, Glaurung is dead. And he finds this particular necklace called the Noglamir. And this necklace, which we see here, is it's actually not in this complete form yet. It's this necklace part right here. This is a Silmaril that gets put on it in just a second. Anyway, he finds this. This was one of the greatest treasures of Nargothrond. Everybody knew that it was in there. It was made by the dwarves a long time ago as a gift to the elven lords that lived there. This was widely considered one of the most beautiful objects left on Middle-earth, other than the Silmarils themselves. So Húrin goes and gets the Noglamir. And he walks all the way over to Doriath. And he gets into Doriath and gets to the throne of Thingol and throws the necklace down at the feet of the king and says, "That's for taking care of my kids." And it's a pretty tense moment there, right? Because, like, in one way, it's the best thing that any human could have hoped to give an elf, right? Because, again, it's like one of the most beautiful things in the world. But his tone and his meaning here are real clear. Basically, like, you didn't actually do very much. In fact, all of my kids are dead now. And my wife is lost in the wilderness. And, kind of middle finger to you, Thingol. And it's at this point that Melian, again, who's Thingol's wife, and again, Amaya, so kind of demigod, she realizes that what is going on in Húrin's head is that Morgoth is still screwing with his head. Like, letting him go was part of the torture, was part of the punishment. And so Melian uses her power to basically get Morgoth out of Húrin's brain. And as soon as that happens, he's like, "Oh crap, man, I just did some real bad stuff. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that." And he picks up the necklace, the Noglamir, and he gives it to Thingol, and he's like, "You did everything that you could. I apologize for my actions and my tone. I realized that, this was all Morgoth's fault. And my son didn't make the world's best decisions. Please take this as actual payment for the thanks that I actually do have, that you tried to do everything you could to keep my family safe." And so there's like a rift that happens, and it's immediately healed. And Thingol goes, "What are you going to do? Can I help you with anything?" And Húrin's like, "I've got to go find my wife." "Are you not entertained?" Aristotle, thanks for ringing in with a party of 11. Hello, everybody. Dun dun dun. What's up, Retheus? As a note, we are about 2 hours into a really long and complicated story about the children of Húrin, who just made some really bad decisions and had some really tough lives, and we're kind of at the end of a really bad story where well, I'm not going to say what happens just yet, but normally if you come and check out my stream, I'm talking about actual, like, real world history. I teach history and sociology at college, so I talk about history stuff. But when we pass century marks, I follow, I do a history of Middle Earth. So if you're a fan of Tolkien, I have, at this point, I think 8 other episodes or 9 other episodes of Middle Earth history. So we are going through the first age at this point. Yeah, we're talking about Turin, Turambar. Bloodstained, son of ill fate. Agar Wayne, son of Umlauth. Yeah, lots of names in the mix here. Aristotle, thank you so much for the raid, though. If you're not already following Aristotle, you really should. So we're talking about Turin. Turin has just killed himself after killing someone unjustly, slaying a dragon, and finding out that the woman that he loved was actually his sister. So not a happy life of Húrin, the children of Húrin, because, he had some bad coping strategies. His coping strategy was pretty much pride, anger, and going out and killing stuff. So at this point, Morgoth, the big bad, has released Húrin, who's Turin's father, from captivity. And Húrin is going to go try to find his wife, Morwen. You can say whatever you want to in chat. I won't read it because I try to keep what I say PG-13. So you're welcome to say whatever you want to, but in the VODs, I try to keep it clean because I know for a fact that there are people who have family members that are younger that are watching, and I also know that there are some people who use these VODs for college stuff. There's a professor out in California that actually I met at a panel that I was on about Tolkien history that told me that she uses my Histories of Middle Earth in her classes to talk about some of the themes in Tolkien. So I try to keep it PG and clean. You say whatever you want to, and you say however much you want to. You're not going to bother me at all. I just won't read it all. So Húrin, he's going to go look for Morwen, who's his wife. And Morwen had been lost in the wilderness and had sort of been wandering around trying to find her children. And as what can only be the saddest possible outcome, they wander around looking for each other for a long time, years and years and years. And they only find each other for the last time at the graves of their children. So this is another Ted Naismith. So here we have Morwen and Húrin, and they are finally reconciled with each other. This being the gravestone where Turin is buried, this being the cliff that their daughter jumped off of. And they meet each other at literally the last moments of their lives. And they themselves die on the spot. To sort of wrap up the story there. As the most bummer possible ending of the story. So, alas for the children of Húrin. The Dungeon Master doesn't step in because in this game, diesies for realsies. You don't get to reroll Constitution saves. You're just dead. And that concludes the story of the children of Húrin and the sad tale that it is. It is one of the saddest stories in all of Tolkien's work. At least they found each other. They did. They found each other just long enough to mourn the children that would never get old. Rough stuff. But poignant and teaches us good lessons, as most things in Tolkien's world do. Things like valor is not as great as constant. Well, what not? I had a great saying for this, and I should have written it down. Going out and killing stuff isn't always the right answer. Sometimes thinking about stuff and being more rational is a good idea. And be careful what you name yourself and the names that you take for yourself, because you can start inhabiting those names, right? Very cursed indeed, like endless bad decisions, just like humans. Indeed, it's not good stuff, but it is what it is. Discretion is the better part of valor. That's a good one, and it fits for what I was trying to get at. And that is the difference between history and adventure stories. Sometimes the bad stuff wins. Yeah, it does, right? Talking swords that turn black after you stab your best friend to death are probably best disposed of. That's a great lesson, right? I don't know. That's contrary to the bumper sticker I read. Murder is always the answer. I disagree. I think murder is bad and we shouldn't do it, right? So that's all that I had planned. But as always, if anybody has any questions about the story, you are welcome to ask. It is a sad story. Shane with a bold anti-murder stance, right? I am very openly anti-murder. Not a big fan of murder. So Turin would hard disagree. Yeah, Turin is all about the killing, right? So anybody else have any questions about this stuff or sort of broad Tolkien stuff or anything like that? Otherwise, we can start thinking about where to go. And I wanted to get done before 9:30 my time, so we have officially made that happen. So that makes me happy. Are dwarves and elves live-born, or is it an egg thing? In Lord of the Rings, dwarves and elves are both live-born, and they both start off as babies, and they grow from there. There's not anything that's like spore-born in Tolkien's world. I mean, I guess except for fungus and stuff like that, but that's naturally spore-born. There are eggs involved, yes, but you know what I'm talking about. Not like an egg with a shell. Great story. Thank you for reminding us of the best storytellers. Yeah, Tolkien is if I ever get to be half as good of a storyteller I would probably be an international bestseller. All of this was punishment for Húrin for fighting really well. Well, it's not just for him fighting really well. This whole thing was to punish him for not revealing the location of Gondolin. So if we look at our map here, right here, there is this little hidden valley called Gondolin. And this is where the kingdom of Turgon was. And Turgon was, at that point, the High King of the Noldor. And his kingdom was the only one where Morgoth really didn't know very much about. The Chrysaegrim right here are the Mountains of the Eagles. So the Ares of the Eagles is sort of right here around this to kind of keep airspace safe. Basically, Gondolin was hidden, and Morgoth really wanted to know where it was. And Húrin had been to Gondolin and had come out of Gondolin and knew where the location was. And Morgoth wanted to know so that he could go wreck Gondolin. As a bit of history, wasn't it Húrin that spent some... Yes, he did. He did spend some early years in Gondolin. And he and his cousin Tuor... Huor. Húrin and Huor had both been there. And in a future episode, we'll talk about Turin's cousin, who is Tuor, who is directly involved in the larger machinations of the fall of Gondolin. Because, heads up, it doesn't stay hidden forever. But I guess that's kind of spoilers. But if you've ever read the Silmarillion, none of this should really be spoilery kind of stuff. But, spoilers. Tuor, the best boatsman ever. Yeah. It's spelled like this. Tuor. So And didn't Húrin swear an oath that he wouldn't reveal the location as part of being allowed to leave? Correct. Pinky AU. Dun 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 dun. Thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. Hope you're having a good one. So they were not supposed to ever leave Gondolin. That was sort of the thing. You showed up, they caught you, you weren't supposed to ever leave. But there was some god-level intervention there where Ulmo had sort of made it known that there was going to be some human stuff involved here and that Turgon should keep his eyeballs open. And even when Turgon was going to Gondolin, Ulmo had said, look, dude, there are things that are going to happen, and I can't tell you everything because that would be too easy, and God spoilers just tend to not work so great in stories. But there's going to be some humans involved, and you need to kind of be ready for this, and I'll kind of let you know what's going on. So, yeah, Húrin and his cousin managed to get out of the whole world there. So Huor and Húrin both got out by swearing oaths that they would never reveal the location of Gondolin. So, other questions. This is good. I mean, clearly I can talk about Tolkien stuff for hours. Clearly, right? You can see who's screaming. You can go see who he's going to go raid. Or we could answer questions for another 10, 15 minutes. It's really up to you all. I'm not going to hang around forever if there are no additional questions. But yeah. This is one of my favorite parts of the Silmarillion. What are your top 100 favorite events for Middle-earth ranked? Moose, no. That would take an amazing amount of time to do, and I don't even know the answer to it because I would have to rank 100 events to begin with. So I appreciate the attempt at keeping me on forever, but no. Didn't they reveal the location of Gondolin? So as to not completely spoil the story of the fall of Gondolin, suffice to say that Gondolin does get revealed, but it's not from one of them. I talked for your whole drive home. Does it really take you 2 hours to drive home? Because that makes me sad. Because that means it takes you 2 hours to drive in. And that means you're on the road for 4 hours a day. And that is no bueno. I don't like that at all. If I could take Brittany on one date anywhere in Middle Earth, what would I choose? That's a great question. I actually have an answer to this. So let me see if I can find an appropriate map. I've got multiple maps saved here. I don't need a third age map. Do I have a second age map? I probably don't have one handy. I'd probably have to go look at it. I do have a first age map. Yeah, can I make that work? Yeah, I can make that work. Okay. Well, I can kind of make that work. You'd have to use your imagination. I really need a second age map of Middle Earth. Anyway, let me show you this and get this kind of in frame here. Okay, so this is the map of the first age. And the first age map does not look like the third age map. So to let everybody know, just thematically, if you're not super duper familiar with all of this stuff, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit both take place in the third age of Middle Earth. So at this point, we are about 6,000 years plus between the events that we're discussing and the stories that are in Middle Earth, basically. So Lord of the Rings is in the 3,600 year range or so of the third age, and the second age is another 3,000 plus years long. So anyway, we're a long way away from that. Now, all of this stuff gets wrecked at the end of the First Age. Spoilers. And the only thing that's pretty much left of Middle Earth, like all of this gets pretty much dropped into the ocean. All of this pretty much gets crushed by the gods into the ocean. So if we look at this region right here, we can kind of see what Middle Earth looks like. If you kind of know what Middle Earth looks like in the Third Age, these are the Misty Mountains. These are the White Mountains. This is the Gap of Rohan. This is Anduin, the Great River. So this is the Greenwood where it's called Mirkwood by the time you get to the Third Age. So this doesn't have Mordor, but if you could imagine that there is a sort of U-shaped set of mountains right here, that's where Mordor is. It gets created by Sauron. He literally raises these mountains out of the ground to create it. So the question, where would I take my wife? Now, there's a big old forest right here. And in the Third Age, this is referred to as Fangorn Forest. But you can see that it's part of this larger forest in the First Age. Now, the Fangorn Forest is inhabited by Ents, who are like Treebeard, right? The shepherds of the trees. And at some point in either the First Age or the Second Age, the Ents go right over here into this region, and they build these giant, beautiful gardens that are full of flowering shrubs and annual flowers, and they're just filled with things like birds and good smelling what am I trying to say here, like spices or like herbs and stuff like that. So this is a beautiful region right around here, and the Ents do this for the Ent wives. So Ents are males, Ent wives are females, and the Ent wives were always more drawn towards things like flowers and blooming shrubs and things like that. So the Ents are over here in the deep woods, and then across the river over here, there are these giant, beautiful gardens that are just full of wildlife and stuff like that. So if I got to take my wife anywhere in Middle Earth at any point, it would be while that region right here was at its height. So we could go hang out and watch all the birds, and we would be surrounded by absolutely beautiful nature. And I really think that my wife would appreciate that. Unfortunately, that area gets completely destroyed in the big wars that end the Second Age. And by the time we get to the Third Age, this region right here is known as the Brown Lands because everything's dead. When Frodo and Sam and Smeagol are crossing the marshes of the Emyn Muil, they're going through what used to be the beautiful gardens of the Entwives. So there you go. That's my answer to that question. And that's a great question. This is Los Angeles. It takes 2 hours to get anywhere. Probably an hour and 40 minutes today. That's crazy. Cave should be. Well, I mean, he was here earlier, but I think he's streaming right now. What's up, Tropical? Good to see you. It is sort of Edenic. Way to end on a downer. This is a downer kind of stream, man. The Children of Húrin is not a happy story. I could not leave you on a high note. So, there we go. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Happy New Year to you, too. I hope you're having a good one. It's good to see you. I know that you were kind of taking a break from Twitch for a little bit. And that's perfectly okay. I hope that you're having a good one. I'm glad to see you back around. I am around, indeed. I was around. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. That's an old song. And I would be surprised if somebody in here did not know what that was. It was a Pete and Pete reference. You're off the computer still on weekends. I see ya. Yeah, that was Adventures of Pete and Pete. One of my favorite shows as a kid. I have 2 of those seasons on DVDs. Yeah, absolutely, Tropical. I took a lot of time off during the holidays as well. Not just from streaming, but also from, completely not watching Twitch at all. Garden of the Entwives could have been a high note, but of course that had to die also. Of course it did. It's a sad stream. Not every stream can end happy, right? You're very welcome, Sienna, and thanks for coming back around, or coming around in the first place. And I hope that you enjoyed yourself. So everyone is streaming all the tabs. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of folk on right now. So let's go do a raid. I think it's about time to. It's a long material, and I kind of talked really fast to get it all crammed in. But let's go do a raid. And there's a streamer on that hasn't streamed in a little while, and I rarely ever get to raid over. So let's go see Bad Mood Leather, who is a leather worker. Met her at Dragon Con. Hoot to be around. Incredibly talented streamer. Does props for movies and stuff like that. So let's show some love to Bad Mood when we get there. As always, if you would like to participate, you can yell out adventure. And if you have those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat too. Until the next centennial mark of followers. We're at 916 right now, right? So we've got 84 more followers to scrape up, and we'll do another adventures in Middle Earth history, right? But until then, everybody, see you Thursday. We're going to be talking about Central Asian history and Tibet specifically. But have a good one, and I'll see you around. See ya.